say diverges rather than.
Same thing I meant, well, remember what I said now about the 1 plus 1/2 plus 1/3 and so
Yeah.
forth? It diverges. What does that mean? Well, as I told you, you don't have to be able to reconstruct this, but you can group those numbers.
Okay.
The first number, and then the next 4, and then the next 8, and the next 16. And every one of those groups adds up to something more than 1. Okay? And since there's no end to that series, that sum diverges. Okay? Whereas a lot of sums will converge, like 1 plus 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16 and so forth. It's like there's a wall. Okay? And I'm 2 units away from the wall. Now I go halfway. So I just went 1 unit, right? And then I go halfway again. Well, that's half a unit. Now I go half of that, which is 1/4. And then half of that, which is 1/8. Do I ever get to the wall?
No.
I always just go halfway. I never get there.
Yeah.
Okay? So I can, no matter how many steps I take, I never get there. But, is there any limit to how close I get to that wall?
Yeah.
Will I eventually get within a millimeter?
Yeah.
Won't take that many steps. Within 20 steps, I'll be within a millimeter of that wall. Okay? So, within a million steps, how close am I going to be? Well, way less than the Planck length, which is, of course, impossible in this universe. You can't get that close. Okay, if theories are valid. Okay? So, the limit of how far I go is how far I was to start with. That tells me that the sequence 1 plus 1/2 plus 1/4 and so forth approaches 2 as a limit, because that's how far I keep getting closer and closer to 2. No matter how close I want to get, I can get that close. Unless there's a limit within this universe. Of course, there's a limit in my atomic structure. So, I can't really go past that. And I don't have the control to make steps that tiny anyway. But theoretically, the limiting distance would be 2. Okay? So it's possible to have an infinite series or sequence of numbers that add up to a finite number. It's also possible to have an infinite sequence of numbers that add up, that diverge. Okay? This sequence then, or this series, converges to 2. The other series diverges because there's no limit. And it exceeds any possible bound, just like this exceeds any possible bound, as epsilon gets close to 0. Okay? It's a negative bound, but it'll get as far away as you want. Okay? And this area then approaches infinity. Okay? So, and this came about because we talked about convergent, right? So this means it's divergent. Divergent integral. You can't put a number on it. And the number, it's essentially, the integral essentially gives you an infinite area. Okay? Although infinity isn't a number, so that's really kind of a misstatement. Still, the idea makes sense.